Super great. Hey, do you already know Justice before? Did you already know about him?
I think we're meeting fresh first time.
Of all of his articles on Mirror about governance and like the future and all the amazing.
Amazing. Yeah.
Sure. I don't want to lose any of the valuable time that we have with our guest today. Boogie, do you have the recording started just yet? I'd like to welcome 0xjustice. I would love to hear about your journey in Web3 today. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I've been hearing about you guys for a long time, and even just the description, like really been, tickling my brain. Governance games and just so I'm happy to be here.
That is wonderful. And I assume we have some kind of ambassador from our other crew. Are they here?
Yes, we have Dakota from Cohere Network, but he's not here yet. I'm reaching out to him, and we should have him here in a couple minutes.
Sure enough. Well, while we wait on Dakota, let's go ahead and talk about Justice and Bankless and some amazing DAO stuff. Let's go for it.
Cool. I'll kind of give like a little bit of my background and what really has me excited in the DAO space. And I give the background not just be like biographical, but I think it gives some insights into my my toolbox and the things that are shaping my thinking in this DAO space. Because I definitely think there's opportunity to have many different interpretations and narratives, and my perception is that there tends to be a one dominant narrative, and so I'm advocating for a change up there. So my background is I went to college for philosophy and systematic theology, and then that led me into formal languages, symbolic logic, semantic logic, and that's ultimately not until my late 20s got me turned on to computer science, when I finally realized that computers were not just machines for gaming or browsing or watching videos, but were actually just giant truth tables, logic, crunching logic tables. I was like, man, okay, I'm sold. And so then I fell down the rabbit hole so hard. I went back to school for computer programming, database design, and then I was a high-strung individual, a gunner, founded some startups, and then I found I couldn't compete with people who have been programming since they were 13. I'm in my late 20s, right, at that time. And so I kind of pivoted to say, well, I'm really good at tech stack, and I can bring teams together and like paint a vision. And so I went into more of like a product owner, scrum master, agile coach. And so over the past, 5+ years or whatever, I've been an enterprise agile coach. Now, what that looks like for me is really like organizational design. You have a body of IT work you need delivered, and you have a certain collection of teams. How do you organize those teams? How do those teams communicate? And then like, how do you put like statistics and data so you actually know like, hey, we're going to spend $1 million on this IT migration. When's it actually going to be done? And so then when, super into crypto from the early days, like I'm talking about like when the white paper dropped, I had my libertarian friends forwarding it to me, mining on a Dell computer type stuff. And I kind of like lost interest a little bit. And I had a bunch of Bitcoin. I spent it all on Silk Road. If you guys knew how much money I spent on drugs on Silk Road, you would trip. I should be like a billionaire, right? And so I kind of interest until DAOs hit. And it was like, dude, this is the app. This is it. This is programmable coordination. Like I am in it. I really wasn't able to get my hands dirty until Bankless DAO launched. And it was just like, dude, 35,000 bank, connected Discord, snapshot, multi-sig. Dude, my first few days in with Gnosis showing up to demonstrate multi-sigs at BDAO. And like I was like, this is where I want to be. I'm never leaving this place. Went to East
Sounds
Denver.
like you had a really, really mind-expanding experience with Bankless. Like, even if you kind of knew or understood that there was like this really incredible technology right there at your fingertips. I kind of had the same experience that the tooling kind of wasn't up to snuff, or really kind of still isn't maybe up to snuff for the really world changing kind of possibilities that crypto offers us.
Oh, dude,
Was that exciting, or like what was the next thing that you went into after you found kind of all of these coordination tools?
so then what happened is right away I was like, man, the way we're trying to organize things in BDAO, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because it's not like I'm not like real smart and know the future. It's not going to work because I'm bringing along a history of team design and team interactions and like team topologies knowledge. And so I tried to kind of say, hey, we have to organize in cross-functional teams for the most part. These departments, there's too many handoffs. The coordination will be too high. And I wasn't really being heard because we're all anon. No one's bringing their history with them. And so I would cause me to go back to the drawing board and try to articulate. And I suddenly started to see this merger between agile, lean, software engineering, and how that applies to like internal, like DAO design and stuff. And so from BDAO, I just started writing, rethinking the DAO contributor funnel to ETH Denver. There's some others, efficient DAO design, some others I may be forgetting in there, but basically trying to crystallize and solve the puzzle, right? And so did some work in BDAO, got elected governance solution engineer, and now I do a lot of work for Polygon and some other type stuff. And so really trying to, at this point, kind of add something different to the DAO design conversation and the architecture question that's more than launch a token gate, we'll vote on proposals, multi-sig. I think there's so much there that we're barely scratching the surface. It's very exciting.
So I sorry, I was just kind of thinking about the question, and I kind of had a question earlier of around what is system philosophy, I think is what you said. And it kind of sounds to me like you came into Web3 being a professional in these organizational structures. And it is unfortunate that, DAOs do have this problem of not really listening to anons or new, quote unquote, new people that they don't recognize within their own social spheres and networks. Yeah. So it sounds like you were having a little bit of a struggle there. What do you think was the most impactful thing that you were allowed to do once they started listening, once you did get that?
Dude, listen, man. The thing that I was able to do is, when I look back, my biggest failing, it created like tremendous humility in me, and also kind of made me think, well, I have to think differently, because you cannot just blanketly apply my previous knowledge. And what it was I got put on as the project champion for the Bankless DAO website. So basically, redesign, re-architect. We're going to go full distributed. It's a complex project. Now, in the normal world, IRL, doing something like this would have been very easy. Small time, knock it out in a week with a team, right? And this was a completely different animal. It was like the politics were different, the power lines, dependability. Someone, they're going to do something and then they don't do it, or just disappear, or a new person starts. Do they automatically have to be onboarding? There was like so many challenges. So it was like it caused me to have to think differently, and what does work, and how do I need to adjust my thinking, because there's a whole separate set of tools here that have to be leveraged to solve these problems, So that was a big change.
It's a whole new beast out here.
It is, yeah. It is.
So do you think that the tools are coming up into snuff, or is it potentially just a 100% cultural issue? Because I think that is one thing that isn't happening maybe in Web3 as intensely as it should, and that's the development of culture. I mean, we have GMs and we have, WAGME and this, that, and another, but as far as like organizationally speaking, there's not a culture of us kind of saying, hey, where do you fit? And where do you do good work? And how do you show up for that?
Yeah, I think there's I don't know how else to say it, but there's prejudice against work, or prejudice against like commitment and agreements, or there's this idea that, man, there's an enthusiasm and energy that we're going to build a whole new future is going to be totally different, and maybe there's a naive assumption that human nature is going to be different. And that said, then what that does is that produces us that kind of makes us not use common sense with a lot of things. And so, like, I remember I thought about this. I think it was MCon. Somebody asked. They said, "Has anyone ever been fired into DAO?" And no one raised their hand. And someone said, "Well, that's a problem, isn't it?" And I thought about it later. I'm like, well, certainly people haven't been funded, and that's the same thing as getting fired. So we can use different. Yeah. We can use different words, but sometimes our usage of different words is only brainwashing ourselves. You know what I mean? And so, a culture that like, hey, this is an organization. We're going to do this great thing. Are you on the team or not? Okay, now you have a stream. If you don't show up, you're going to get fired. Like, because we're here to do something great. And so, it's not a popular take, and I frankly don't care because I love DAOs and I want to see this succeed. And everyone's free to like make their own machinery. But I'm bullish on startup DAOs, Y Combinator DAOs, reimagining Uber as a DAO, and I'm very bearish on the Kumbaya DAOs.
Well, I definitely appreciate your statement that there's some unpopular opinions. There are some very like honest and hard truths that people need to learn about DAOs, and that it isn't all kumbaya. And we can't necessarily blame the tools. You spoke it very clearly. We can't expect human nature to be different just because we're on, some kind of different platform. And honestly, I think it makes it worse. Like there are some pieces where people feel hidden behind these screens and behind their anonymity, necessarily speaking, where I don't need to show up necessarily, or, it's not going to be that big of a deal if I don't show up. But it is, these are real people behind these PFPs. I mean, I recognize all of them that are in here right now, minus the white screen I see down here. But it's, I think that we need to be more friendly in certain ways in Web3, but definitely having a little bit more truthfulness, a little bit more attestation. I do want to ask again about system philosophy and logic games. Like what is that next edge that you're really excited for that maybe is really well functioning DAOs? Like you said, a DAO, a Uber DAO of some sort. What's the next thing, do you think, that's on the horizon?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that, because one caveat I would add to what I said before about like, hey, changing philosophy or mindset or whatever is, I don't look at individuals and be like, hey, jackass, you said you're going to do a thing, you didn't do it. It's like the whole lean, agile, system thinking, theory of constraints. The whole idea is like optimize the whole. And even if you focus on one little thing and try to get it maximum efficient, in the whole, it will be less efficient. And so part of the reason why there's a lack of follow through or commitment is a lack of reputation system. If you sell an empty box on eBay, the reputation system punishes you. It's you get flagged on the account, now you're done. With a reputation system, it's like, dude, if you sell the computer, you're going to ship it because you want future business, right? So along those lines, it's like, what can we build and provide in the DAO space that fixes the system? Because humans will look for the shortest possible line, as they should, right? As is efficiency, So what is the next step? Man, I could not be more insanely excited about moving beyond into like DAOs as games that accomplish something useful and productive. Because I'll characterize it this way. The first DAOs were investment DAOs. The DAO, right? The Moloch DAOs. Let's all put money in here, then we'll vote how to spend it. That's a good start, but think about it. It's not a game because there's no feedback loop on whether it was a good investment. Yeah. So if you think, well, what if we do this? What if all the investments we do, we get incentivized or de-incentivized based upon their change in value over time? What if we made it something like that? And that if you make good decisions, so we're not rewarding just for making decisions. I hear people, we're going to pay people to vote. And I'm like, who thought of this? This is crazy. We should incentivize people to just make a decision. We should incentivize making good decisions about the results, not the activity, right? And so on the investment side, I'm like, okay, cool. And then on the kind of DAOs as games, here's something that's a real trip. It's blowing my mind, right? There's a few different like business models, and you could generally characterize all business models into two categories: pipeline, platform. Pipeline is like, I know some secret, I have some resource, I have something that I can produce, build, provide, and other people will consume it from me. Okay. The other is a platform. And a platform is like, I provide the means of connection between a whole large group of people who provide the thing, they make it, and then a whole other group of people who consume it. And I get upside by taking a cut of the connection fee. If you think about it, only one of those business models is even possible to decentralize. It's the platform. Pipeline business models, how do you even decentralize that? You're the source. And so if we say, okay, let's reframe every business that we have that we want to DAOify as a platform. If we're doing education, instead of us doing the education, how do we attract educators, allow them to charge whatever they want, and attract students on some little specific domain, right? And then take a cut, that is DAOifiable. And then how do we build that platform as a protocol? And so this is where you get into platform science, and there's all kind of like multi-sided, the cold start problem. It's like deep, that exists deep before Web3. We can draw on all that and then bring in the Web3 protocolization of it and the ability to incentivize certain outcomes through cryptographic tools, tokens, governance, and all this stuff. And we have something that neither of those worlds currently possess. We have these governance games, minimum governance. Governance is overhead. Okay. Imagine if we had to have a snapshot vote for every block that's solved on an L1. This is not even a solution. The idea is that there's almost no governance, and that's why it scales. So we have to tighten it in and do something like a maker DAO, where governance is like restricted to like an interest rate, or a Uniswap. Do we turn on fees or not? We can add other more sophisticated governance around that, but let's start with building those platforms that scale and that do one thing really well. We can pipe them together and do cool stuff.
100%. So one of the things that got me into cryptocurrency was a single article. I had been, grinding the imagination of what Bitcoin kind of unlocked for us, but Bitcoin never had smart contracts. And that was really the thing that I was imagining when I was imagining, we could change the world with cryptocurrency. I dropped a little article in our Townhall chat on the right-hand side, and it's an article that says, Ethereum is game-changing technology, literally. And at the end of that little
that's good.
Yeah, it's a good one, man.
On there.
So at the bottom, it says, go through a classic game theory textbook, enumerate all of the common non-cooperative games. See for how many of those games cooperation could, via conditional payouts or deposit burns, yield a superior equilibrium than the original Nash equilibria. So that's that whole piece we're talking about, where we're like, game theory. It's like, how do we end up with triple bottom lines or triple win bottom lines? And this is how we do it. We literally take these broken and egregious, aggressive institutions, and we flip them inside out. We turn them into all commons goods of some sort, where it's a community organizing these magical things that we use on a regular basis. Have you seen that particular article by any chance?
You know what? I have it open, but I have not read this, but I will.
Yeah, read through it. And that was the thing that really kind of made me choose my non-diplom for at least Twitter, and it's changethegame.eth, because that's what we can do here. We can take all of these broken ecosystems or broken business models and turn them into something that actually works for people, as opposed to centralized entities or corporations, which are, pretty detached from the real human activity of regular life.
I'll say this, we can chat about it or whatever, but I'm real contrarian on a lot of this stuff. Like, I love capitalism. I think capitalism is nothing more than free trade and private property. If you believe in those two, you believe in capitalism. And I also don't think that Web 2 is like this intrinsically unfair, oppressive thing. It's like, you don't want to use Facebook, don't use it. They provide like the most sophisticated world connecting software, and the only thing you have to do, or you don't even have to, is like see some ads. And so exit, I love the idea of exit. And the idea of exit is like you don't want to play this game. Cool. You can play another game. You can build something else. You can do anything. And so look at it like this. It's like a programming language. I love the programming language and talk about like design constructs and design patterns and build everything you want. And I love the fact that in a programming language, if it's like an organizational programming language, like we're doing with DAOs, is you could say, oh, this is what a dictatorship looks like, or this is what a Ponzi organization looks like, or these are the trade-offs of like giving out ownership to everyone, and like there's overhead and no decisions can be made. And more kind of an abstract looking at it, like what can be built with AWS web services, right? And kind of those type of things. And so love startup culture and all that, and definitely see like the distribution of ownership as a feature rather than a right. I'm very leery of kind of a socialist Keynesian, everything should be owned by everyone. It's like, motherfucker, you build it. If you want to own it and you deserve it, then you build it. But don't dog on people who are working real hard and like, oh, you're entitled to ownership of it, And what's amazing about being able to distribute ownership is it kind of short circuits the cold start problem. The cold start problem is, you have a platform business, and in order for it to get one people on the platform to come, you need the other side. But in order to get the other side, you need them. And so what you can do is you can say, we're going to distribute ownership early in the game to incentivize people to get here. That buys us time to create greater utility on this token. And so it's a feature that can be used in very myriad ways in different like places. And so I love taking kind of the politics and the religion out of programmable organizations. And even for that reason, the people I'm working with, they even like kind of sometimes don't want to use the word DAO, because the DAO has like so much baggage associated with it, when it's like these are digital organizations, programmable organizations, decentralized organizations. This is the stuff I really love. But I also support anyone who wants to build other stuff. Everybody who's like, listen, we're going to make the most regen public goods and all. I'm like, awesome, I hope it works, sweet, but I also like the people that are just like, this is a business to make money, we think there's an opportunity and we're going to use it strategically. I'm like, sweet, let's see how it works out. It's all games. As long as there's exit, then it's all fair and no one complains, hopefully.
So with the commentary about the exits, I assume you're a major fan of the Moloch DAO infrastructures.
I'm a Moloch DAO fanboy, man.
Yeah. That's good stuff. So have you seen version 3 or Ball coming out soon?
Man, I am so eager to play with V3. I got the docs open here. The idea that you can change the parameters under governance. The fact that you can now have shares that are tradable on the open market and even change that over time. Yeah, frankly, I'm like, dude, when they release V3, I will be talking about it, doing educational material. This may be the between Moloch DAO V3 and the new Aragon protocol, hopefully both of them announced at ETH Denver. I hope it kicks off the next like DAO bull run and attracts a lot of businesses that can like say, we could run our stuff like on hyper speed on this stuff. So very cool.
Oh yeah. And I think that's the cool thing is like Ball really allows for that next level of experimentation. I think that Ball is going to open up high speed DAOs. And I think high speed DAOs are something that you kind of spoke to, is that it's a game. There's an intent, there's a purpose, there's a process. And at the end, you either win or lose, and then we quit. We exit. We just take all of the fun, and we go on our separate ways.
That's why I prefer, even though I wrote the DAOs as digital nation states or whatever. And people look at that and they're like, oh, you must be for the framing. And I'm like, I'm only from the framing in an ethical and a legal standpoint. I'm not for the framing that we should structure our DAOs like nations. Nations are the poorest run thing in the history of man. The only reason that they're solvent is because they take money from you with guns. Okay? And so I'm not for, but the ability for I lost my train of thought, but I really like framing DAOs as like games that you can come in and play, and if you don't like it, go to another one. And that's why I think it makes more sense to frame them as businesses or organizations. And even Vitalik says, he says very few will operate at nation state patterns, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. Man, it's amazing. It's amazing what we're going to be able to do with DAOs, or what we're doing with DAOs already. I mean, metagame has been here for how many years, Bogey? Beth?
A couple years now.
At least 3 or maybe even 4 now? I don't know. The pandemic kind of really screwed up my timeline personally.
Right.
Oh, Lord. So,
the token
ahead.
engineering is, one thing that has me super interested is, I'll throw this out there because this is kind of an interesting framing. In the history of philosophy, there was a shift from continental to analytic philosophy. And for a long time, and it's not like it was just one way and then it changed. There were earlier thinkers that were more on the analytical side, but continental philosophy, characterized by people on the continent of Europe, was like, hey, what's the meaning of life? What does meaning mean? Where is everything platonic? There's another dimension. It was all this type of stuff. And then the analytic philosophy came along and it was like, listen, we're going to rigorously define every word in this sentence, and then we'll convert it to a symbol, and then we'll make these symbols interact through rigorous logic, through formal verification to determine what's true or what's not. And this gave birth to a whole new kind of field of thinking of philosophy. I'm espousing, promoting, trying to produce something of a different way of thinking, of an analytical shift in DAO thinking, where it's more about mechanism design, token engineering, and game design, and this type of stuff, and rather than the politics and the deep stuff. Someone said something the other day. They were like, "Yeah, DAOs, they really, we need to get into like organizational healing," and I'm like, "Bro, I'm out." What organizational healing is, man, you go for it, but dude, I'm out at this stuff, and the idea that right now people are doing token engineering just at like a tokenomics level. But think about it. If you can carefully define the organizational like capabilities of your org, like as they have interfaces, there's an API. Like if you have a rigorous thinking of those different capabilities, you can begin to model them just like tokenomics too. You can start doing like machination simulations of different capabilities, and even start thinking about rational behavior. And if a person operates in this thing, what would they do? And let's assume their behavior is different. Changing the incentives. You can model this stuff. And then if you can model it, think about what we're doing then. You can simulate. In my software delivery stuff, we do like Monte Carlo simulations, which is to say, well, this team does really good sometimes and a few times bad. And we'll say, let's run the simulation 1,000,000 times based upon their statistical normative stuff and see when this work will be done and whatever. Imagine you could do that with DAOs. And that's the stuff like the AWS cloud formation, which is like a text file that defines your whole tech stack. Imagine we do that for programmable organizations. This is the stuff that straight gets me high.
So that's the edge. That's the edge you're looking for. That's what you're excited for coming down the metaphorical pipeline.
That's it. Yep.
So cool. Yeah. It's a little like mind blowing to even try to imagine it or sculpt it. Like you're making a hyperstructure in your brain, trying to think of all the things that you could do.
I think that the start is to kind of do a layout on the table of what are the Lego pieces, what are the categories of Lego pieces, and like how do they interact. And a lot of writing is out there, and then these images that show like, oh, here's a social, or here's a governance, and like not just have them out there and say, okay, can we define them, and then do they interact, and begin to kind of like suss out like in a more kind of formal way what they look like, and then from there you're just taking little steps further and further into like formal modeling of them. It's too cool.
Too cool. I have to agree. Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions for us? If you don't want to chat, you can also drop your questions in the Town Hall chat. I will see them there.
open to questions, and also if anyone just like, know about that, happy to have like friendly discourse. I'm here because I love the ecosystem. I love the thinkers.
Yeah, for sure. Have you had a lot of experience with? Oh, here's a good question. Crypto Co asks, where do you see DAOs in 10 years? So in 2033, where do you see DAOs?
I would say this. Check this out. There's a historical narrative here that is lost a lot of times. The what is it? Code is eating the world. Andreessen Horowitz. That quote, and it was like he was saying every company would become like a software company. And then it's 20 years later or whatever, and we're like, damn, man, that's kind of true. And it's like, well, then we needed to make the software faster, but also deploy it faster. So that's where DevOps, GitOps, cloud came in for the deployment. And so now you have like a million versions of Facebook running all at the same time, being deployed all day, every minute. So this whole idea of like code consuming everything, and we're just on the very edge of, because enterprise and business, they're always slower to adopt this stuff. We're at the very bleeding edge of it. And this idea that we'll blow away big businesses and all this stuff, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to adopt more and more internal automation and code and unstoppable public protocols in such a way that they become a part of the narrative. It may not, I don't think it's going to carry the like, hey, we brought it down. I think that there will be effectively business, corporate, there will be all these kind of open APIs online that are unstoppable, permissionless. Everyone can interact with them. All of business will become pipeable, programmable, and composable. And so, the protocolization of these massive companies, that's where I see things going.
So potentially in 10 years, we may have something, if you're good enough at programming, very close to the metaverse, where it's like anything and everything is kind of accessible and right there at the edge of your fingertips, and it's engageable. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be something else for sure. Now, it looks like Dakota just came in here from Cohere Network, and I would love to hear from you. I think what you guys are doing out there is very, very interesting. And I think Jose might be interested in what you're doing in Guatemala as well right now. So give us a shout, Dakota.
Hey guys, good to be here with you. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good to be here. Yeah, calling in from Lake Atitlan. And yeah, Cohere, we're out to build a decentralized network of regenerative communities. And the basic premise for Cohere is that anytime someone contributes to Cohere, they gain equity in Cohere. And so it's basically like a fancy co-op. And we're out to just accelerate the development of regenerative nodes in strategic places around the world. And so we spent a year developing out a security token so we could, provide direct access to equity of the company itself and not an intermediary, and do so in a manner that's complying with the SEC. And then after that, we went through the Techstars Accelerator. And it's funny because we're like very much in like the Game B world, but we've spent a lot of time figuring out how to be a bridge from Game A, to use Jordan or Jim's terms. And now what we're doing is continuing what we've been also doing the last year and a half, is running these prototypical lab experiences. Basically, we're lining up a series of venues around the world with strategic partners, from Costa Rica to Basel, Bodensee, southern France, Crete, Crestone, Peru, back here at the lake, where we're bringing together experts from the Meta network and just breaking bread. Now, we have specific programming that we do, but at the end of the day, we really feel that everything just operates at the speed of trust. So let's just get together, connect as human beings, sit around, break bread, sit around a fire, and really figure out how we can best amp each other's businesses. And Cohere is just out to be of service to providing the containers to accelerate the movement, and make it fun as hell and really financially rewarding.
Heck yeah. So I heard a couple of the really interesting things in there. Game B, Jim Rutt. I actually kind of came from the world of permaculture, regeneration, passive solar homes, stuff like that. I found Game B in the P2P movement and slowly kind of
Oh,
found my way
sweet.
into crypto and metagame. So that's so cool. I was also going to ask if, what's your Costa Rica little Cohere network look like? And
Yeah.
can we reference people who might be meta fam
Yeah.
down there already?
Oh my gosh, that'd be great, man. Yeah, we were thinking about April and May in Colombia. We're inquiring, we're looking to see maybe that venue has a couple of challenges. One, the owner is having a hard time getting down there with me, so we might switch to a venue in Costa Rica. And yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. Like our
right
whole
on.
goal is just like, Cohere is all about member-owned interstitial tissue, and we want to completely decentralize the ownership. Everyone has stake in the game, and yeah, just help scale the movement. And yeah, Costa Rica would love to connect, and yeah, it's such an important place right now.
Yes, for sure. So I went ahead and sent you a friend request, but another thing that you said that was really interesting me is we move at the speed of trust. And
Yeah,
one of the scarcest, this is something Vitalik said, is that one of the scarcest resources is legitimacy. And I think that's it. That's like the trust and legitimacy is what you're looking for out here.
yeah.
Um, have you struggled to find that, or has it been easier the more events that you've been able to do on the ground, feet on the ground, person to person? Has it been a struggle, kind of being, a decentralized kind of system that operates on the internet when you have these very intense, very real events that you're kind of funding and creating?
Yeah, great question, man. I would say generally no. I mean, it's been going that, it's anyone who's tapped in right now knows like you're not what I mean to say is many people are really hip to how do we build regenerative communities. Communities are far beyond sustainability, and how do we do that well? And because of our whole ethos of the access to ownership and like everyone getting rewarded for the fruits of their labor, it has just been a waterfall of incredible people coming out of the woodworks being like, hell yeah, I've been waiting for this, plug me in, I'm ready to go. And really high caliber people. Um, my background is in architecture and real estate development, and I've done a lot of work in the impact space. And that's kind of the circles we've been running in, or like, how do we redefine capitalism? Like Donnie at the Post Growth Institute, is doing great work on that. And how do we leverage a built environment for, beyond sustainable development into regenerative? And all these circles we've already been deeply connected with are really just, yeah, just coming together. And there's just been seemingly no shortage of incredibly mind-blowing, epic people who are like, yes, let's just do the thing in a practical, step-by-step manner that we can get it done, and get ahead of the curve of, the world's getting a little destabilized, but, tale of two cities. And anyone who wants to just be part of building a new economy, like, and build a new gamification of how we create a new world, are having an amazing time. And so, yeah, it's just been flowing really well.
It sounds like a blast for sure. So one of the things that kind of comes to mind to me is circular economies. So I assume you've seen that, you've heard of that, or donut economies, where money doesn't really go out of the systems. It's not extractionary, so to speak, but that kind of recycling or circular systems. Are Is there any on the ground things that you've done so far that you kind of saw that on a small scale, but existing because you are in community actively working together?
Yeah, and great question. Yes and no. Like in some ways, like the entire design of Cohere is like let me back up to answer your question. Like we really believe that there's like a practical sequence of steps on how we build a fully functional alternative economic policy. And the beginning of that is creating the store of value. And so that's why we're out like Cohere was all about like create the store of value, provide access to that equity, and that's a base. That becomes like the new gold. And once you have that, then you can start to overlay, like a kick-ass utility token like resource or seeds or any one of the amazing, like, incredible tokens that are out there. Um, and but for us, it's really practicality. Like at the end of the day, like let's build the accommodations in a way that's inherently circular, because if we all co-own these nodes and, varying scales, we're all about keeping governance completely localized and all that. Cohere is just the interstitial tissue. But if we're all vested in the success of the other community on the other side of the planet, now I have an impetus to share my IP. I have an impetus to cross-pollinate because it's immediately increasing the valuation of something I co-own. And that is like, we believe that like a baseline for helping to build a more robust circular economy, wherein when our members hire or buy things from each other or hire each other, they're inherently just increasing the value of a system they also co-own. And that's where, we're all about integrating these other pieces step by step, like a marketplace, like all these other functionalities, but an incremental process that really creates a robust circular economy over time.
Incremental progress. Yeah, it's a natural growth system. A lot of DAOs can kind of be compared to biological mechanisms or biomimicry. I think that good things that are very, very strong, they do take a long time to grow.
Yeah.
So you're aligning incentives across the globe through the interstitial tissue of Cohere.
Yeah.
I feel like I had another question, but I just
Well,
lost.
one thing I'd add is like one of the things that we really do with all our sister orgs is, how do we constantly do less? How do we get less in the purview of Cohere? And I really think this is an important thing for the meta network, is oftentimes it's really easy for like when the brain imagines something, then it's just as good as real. So it's like, oh, we're gonna do this and that and this and that. And it's like, well, fuck, man, any one of those things is a 5-year project. And so we're constantly looking at like, oh my gosh, if someone's doing that better, great. You do that, we don't do that. And we just send you all the business. We send you that energy. Because if we can really fine tune what we do, and it's not like we're the only ones by any means, like, and the more the merrier. We need decentralized regenerative communities. And the more the better. Like, there's redundancy in nature everywhere. But we're also just really much about how we optimize with our partners and just get really focused and stay focused.
So I guess the next question may be like, where do you see yourself? That was a great question earlier. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? What is your next really, really exciting like edge case, or what is the most exciting thing that you could succeed in doing over the next 10 years?
Yeah, well, our specific 10-year goal is to knit together 1,000 regenerative communities. So like as an org, that's our goal in 10 years. Yeah, and that's basically it. Like, I just really want to live in a world where, I'm connected with just incredible networks of people doing the best, work possible. And and just being service to building out this new world. And yeah, so I'm an architect. I love designing, and I'm looking forward to replacing myself from wearing this hat that I'm wearing in Cohere and just be building out the most epic things on the planet. But in an economic model that really empowers every single individual who's part of it.
And I think that's super important and valuable because we all do better when we all do better.
Yeah, exactly, man, exactly. Yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. Since we have both OX Justice on the call too, and Dakota, do you have anything to say about Cohere Network, or maybe do you have something that might help them from your perspective or your side of the crypto sphere, so to speak?
I don't know. I mean, the idea, if I own a piece of all these companies, does that make me less competitive? I guess if I own, a small percent of Microsoft, does that? I'm not sure we ever escape the competition. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of the collectivist, individualist side, and I constitutionally kind of fall on the more like individualist, like may the best one win. So I don't know. It's a different way of looking at things.
It definitely feels like our guests are kind of two different sides.
I'll speak You guys asked me to show up, and then I saw who the other guest was. I don't know much about him. I'm hearing about him for the first time, and I saw the description. I said, "They're setting up some kind of secret debate or something with this."
Well, so let's go. Well, man, like I think it's a good yeah. What I really hear what you're saying is like there's, I don't know, what's occurs for me is like there's this balance, and what I also hear is like, is this competitive competition a healthy part of just the human experience? And if you are saying that, I would concur. Like I really think that it's not like a quality of outcome. Like there's always gonna be like it's important that we can strive and have differentiation. I think that's like it, and it's like how do we get beyond like one versus the other? How can a person strive and be the best individual and compete to be that kick-ass human being and do it in such a way that just inherently helps more people versus our current economic frame, which is if I rush to cut the forest or if I better undercut the next guy, I make more money. And that we feel is like not functional anymore.
Yeah, I guess I would say this, right? And I'm going to drop this quote in this website on you. Now, don't be deceived by the website. It's very, these people aren't web designers, but I'll drop the quote here. And the idea is this, is that if our framing is that all previous businesses were extractive, oppressive, terrible things, right? Then it's like, well, yeah, we need to build something better, right? But if the idea is like actually any good business should be impactful, regenerative. Like that's the only way it survives, and also it provides a compelling narrative for its users and that type of thing. And so that's why I like the message of impact and regen, but I'm like, that's good business all around though, So yeah, I'll drop the quote here and then the link. This I cannot comment in Townhall for some reason.
Oh no.
There.
So I think one of the things that is, we're riding the line, we're riding that fence, that edge between two different worlds, two different, very, very different potential worlds. I think that, from the two different sides, someone who might lean a little more capitalist and someone who might lean a little more communally speaking, there is a balance between those two places. Good businesses do stick to their communities. They do invest in their communities.
If they want to survive, yeah.
If they want to survive, that's right. But there's also, circumstances where incentives are aligned or misaligned very, very well due to government interference or, just human ignorance, desire, passion. I'm not quite sure which one that is, but I think there is something to be said for a balance between two different places. There is a world where we all get to succeed and be successful and be okay, where we don't have to compete so hard that we have to ruin other people's lives. And I'm sure people may see that isn't actually what happens. It's just ask Justice if he sees this chat. I've sent a screenshot for him to look at.
You know what? I'll bypass it. Instead of the town hall, I just dropped it in the Metasquare.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So it's this quote. It says, "Great companies are not in business to make money; they make money to stay in business and accomplish that important purpose." I'll say this: like there's so much a political philosophy, and the DAO discussion is almost 1000% dominated by a particular political philosophy, and there is an alternative interpretation that it can be framed where actually capitalism has been the ability to people freely trade and build businesses and this kind of free.
We no longer have audio coming from you, bud.
Oh, hello.
I can hear you.
Oh.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can hear him.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So there's like the Milton Friedmans,
he might be rugging out.
There's the Milton Friedmans, the Austrian economists, and they say this is the thing that has raised the impoverished nations to like industry and stuff. And so there's another way to look at it.
I really appreciate that, and I think that it's really easy to get overly reductivist.
Yeah, dead on, dude.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, dude, capitalism has done good and bad things, and it's also like we're talking about late stage capitalism. We're talking about crony capitalism.
Yep.
And it's just, yeah. And but I really appreciate what you're saying. It's like, dude, good business is of course going to be like taxpayer dollars to be more competitive. Well, that's just pretty like that's just like crony capitalism. That's just like undermining the rule of law to get rich. Like,
And the thing is, with the crony capitalism, it's like crony capitalism is no capitalism at all. It's someone in power has created
Exactly.
so there's a fake competition,
Exactly.
where actually you have to. I really dig that.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to for us to distinguish those things, because then it gets, and that quote you're saying is I also hear in that is let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yeah, let's make the system better, but let's just not make it all bad. It's just there's things that don't work and things that work, and let's just pick and choose and move forward.
Yeah, what I think is dangerous about throwing it out is that the truth inherent in the idea that competition, and that we can move past that. I believe we surely are setting ourselves up for disappointment and failure. And so that's where the protocol first DAO strategy was let's start with a business model. Let's engineer this type of thing. And then if it's compelling and it's successful and it's good, both your users and really enthusiastic contributors will want to come around that and build that out. And I think that's a recipe for better building than trying to have everyone put their money in a pot and then try to build something and say, oh, everyone gets a say. That's a recipe for gridlock, coordination, overhead, and it violates everything we've come to learn about startup science and what makes a good startup, the Startup Genome Project, all this stuff of the industry kind of patterns, winning startup kung fu,
Yeah, thank you so much for articulating that too. I think that's exactly it. I couldn't agree more.
Cool. I'll throw something out there real crazy, just real quick, right? Is a lot of, and I haven't talked to anyone yet who's been able to say well, actually, you're thinking about that wrong, because I'm really not sure. I feel like there's a missing piece for me. Is our entire business framing on a protocol, on-chain businesses and Web3 and all has been the assumption that everything is open source and transparent, and so we're well. How do you build the economic moat? You give out ownership. You can't fork a community. So I'm okay, all makes sense. But then ZK comes in and is actually, you can have on-chain private code, which means now the whole previous, hundreds of years, thousands of years of businesses that are based upon some secret suddenly becomes possible to have those type of business models on chain. And so I'm is ZK going to completely change up our narrative? That you can basically have closed source private code running on chain, and you can have private business logic on chain. Is this going to change up the entire narrative? Does that make sense or land with anyone?
Absolutely.
The thing that lands with me on that is kind of the magical world of value creation that already exists anyways. Right? Money only has value because people assign it and continue to follow through with that. Multi-billion-dollar corporations that are technically hidden and under secrecy anyways already may, for all we know, already be existing on the blockchain concurrently, but they're somehow, blocked away from everyone else because they don't interact with us. They wouldn't have any reason to. So yeah, I think the transparency piece definitely may create something very interesting, but I also think it kind of emphasizes the fact that value isn't real and it's just something that we collectively agree to. So I'm not 100% sure on everyone's time, but that was about an hour and some change. Jose, are you going to close us out with some music today?
Do you hear me?
Yep.
Based upon his profile picture, he has to close us out with music.
Yeah, of course. Digital Space Musician vibes.
Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if you're ready to close it down, I want to thank OX Justice and Dakota so much for coming by and talking to us and giving us something really, really interesting to think about, and really from both sides of an ideological spectrum. We're here to learn. We're here to make the world better for each other. And we can only do that if we listen to one another and come up with solutions together. Thank you so much.
Great to be here, you guys.
Oh, baby. Hey, you look lovely. We'll go dressing up.
Ahora que el cielo llora, se limpia el callejón, aroma pétrico invade mi pulmón. Ahora que el alma llora, se limpia el corazón, aroma algo dulzón, incienso de canela. Calma, 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 calma. Deja que ese es el sonido mental. Sienta tu ira ahí. Dale agua. Deja que ese es el estruendo mental. Abandona el nido y mueve tus alas. Mueve tus alas. Calma, 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 calma. Ahora que el cuerpo sabe que tienes el control, pues ponlo en acción. Construye tu mañana. Ahora que es ahora y tienes la noción, el tiempo se frenó. Construye tu mañana. Calma, 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 calma. calma, calma, calma. Deja que sea un sonido mental, sienta tu ira y dale agua, dale agua. Deja que cese el estruendo mental, abandona el nido, mueve tus alas, mueve tus alas. Calma, 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 calma. Woo!
Woo!
Woo! Thank you.
Man, I'd love listening to that every Friday, man.
Dude,
Thank you.
100%. I
Oh,
I
dude.
get chills every time.
It
My
was a
brain
good sound
resets.
because I was mentioning a bird has two wings, and that song speaks about using our wings to fly. So yeah,
Love it.
looking forward. See you on Bart's Night. See you on Community Alliance. See you on Community Gathering of next Friday.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Everyone
Same.
have a good one, guys. Thank you so much for bringing me in here to host. I appreciate it. I hope I did a good job for everyone.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, man, super
Smashed it,
great.
bro. Yeah, bro.
We
Kill.
have so many great hosts on Metagame.
Host team activate.
Meta host.
It's funny. Sweet, man.
All right, then,
Looking
guys.
forward.
We'll see you around, okay?
Woo.
Peace.
Bye.